in prayer?
Let's bow our heads. Lord, thank you for this evening that we come together safely with our family to learn more about you and your word. Help us to receive and understand your instruction tonight as we gather together. In your name, amen.
Amen. So, for those who were here 2 Wednesdays ago, right? What were we talking about? Archaeology and the Bible, right? The Bible coming to life. And people may think, well, I came in here for a Bible study. I really don't see how that's a Bible study. I beg to differ. Remember, I said for 2 reasons. I think 1, it can help strengthen you as a believer, and 2, it can help in the realm of apologetics. So I talk to someone regularly, and they're a skeptic, they're not a believer, and they always bring charges like, the Bible's really old, how can we trust it? Right? That's a good question, right? And you better be ready to come across skeptics. And if what you got to tell them is to just believe or just to have faith, it'd probably be better if you just not said anything. Because you're not doing the faith justice by saying that, right? The Bible says that we should what? Always have a reason for the hope we have, right? So you got to arm yourself, right? So I said, remember, the Bible is an ancient document, right? And it recovers historical events. So should we not expect that we're talking about thousands of years from the time of the events in the beginning with Adam and Eve, all the way up until about maybe AD 90, right? That's when Revelation was written, right? That's a lot of time. So should there be some stuff outside of the Bible that correlates with what we read in it? I think there should be. And if we look close enough, we may just find it. So the first time we talked about Atrahasis, right? An ancient Mesopotamian version of the flood. And you see similarities, right? They talk about 2 by 2, the animals on the boat, a worldwide flood, right? So people can't say, well, this is just insane. No one else talks about it but those Christians. That's not true. There was people back in the time of Abraham who talked about a worldwide flood. And then we looked at archaeological find number 2, the Code of Hammurabi. He was a king, he was a Babylonian king, and the code had laws and contracts, customs, punishments. And we saw similarities with the Joseph narrative, right? Remember, he was sold for how many shekels? 20. When you look at the code, you see, that's exactly what was the going price for slaves at that time. So before you read these things, you probably just think, oh, that's just an insignificant detail, right? And then when you look at these findings, to me, it's exciting because it makes more sense, doesn't it not? Right? It's not just some random number that he was sold for this much. Okay, whatever. You keep going, right? Now you realize, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. And there was also rules about losing your firstborn rights, like Reuben did for his sins, and then also getting a blessing to the son of the first wife, not a slave wife, which is what we also read in the Bible. So today we're going to pick up, I need someone to look up 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 14. Who's got that? 2 Kings 15, 14. And then someone else needs to find Genesis 25, 26.
That's 15, 14.
2 Kings chapter 15, verse 14. And then someone else, Genesis 25, 26. And then Genesis 30, that one has 2 verses, 13 and 18. Does anyone have any of them yet?
Yeah.
Okay, which one are you reading?
2 Kings 15, 14.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to butcher all these names. For Menahem, the son of Gadi, went up from Tirzah, and came to Samaria, and smote Shallum, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and slew him and reigned in his stead.
Okay. So, who else has one?
25.
25, 26?
25, 26.
Okay.
And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Okay, and then another one is Genesis chapter 30, Then that one's verse 13 and verse 18.
I have that one.
Okay?
Then Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed. So she called his name Asher. And 18, Leah said, God has given me my wages, because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar.
Issachar. Okay, and then the last one is Exodus chapter 1, verse 15.
Exodus, what was that, 1:15?
1:15.
And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah,
Shiphrah.
and the name of the other. What?
Oh, that really, that, we don't, yeah, that one's okay. So it said mentioned two women, right? One of them was Shiphrah. Okay, so again, I said this is significant for the world of apologetics, right? Skeptics, right? They want to know, I got questions, you should have answers, right? You can't answer everything, but we should be able to give them something, right? So a major charge against the Exodus narrative is that there's no evidence of Hebrews living in Egypt, right? Because according to the Bible, all of them went there, didn't they? The end of Genesis, the famine, where'd they all go? Down to Egypt, right? That's where the food was. And when they first got there, they were welcomed how?
When they were as slaves, you mean?
Yeah, when they first got there, how were they welcomed?
As slaves?
Go home and read the story. No! They were welcomed, right?
Yeah.
They didn't become slaves until way later on, right? So first they might have just been like settlers. So again, that's a charge that skeptics have, right? Especially a lot of the Old Testament, right? You really got to dig deep to find something to offer them. So what do we have to say? Yeah, there was, I mean, I don't know if there was millions, maybe thousands, there could have been millions of Hebrews living in Egypt. Shouldn't there be something? Right? So archaeological find number 2 is called the Papyrus Brooklyn. Okay, it's like their type of paper, if you will, right? A scroll. Papyrus Brooklyn, 17th century, found in Thebes. Okay, it is an Egyptian list of domestic servants recorded, which contains Hebrew names. This period came just after the life of Joseph and preceded the Exodus, which was the time that the Hebrews lived in Egypt as settlers and then as slaves. So you guys read those verses and you're like, okay, I'm not making the connection. There was one in Kings, 2 Kings, and Genesis, and then Exodus. The names, did you catch the names? So Jonathan read the one about, some people pronounce it Menahem or Menahem. So there was a name that is Menahema or Menahema, a female name of Menahem, right? And then you had Asherah, which is the equivalent to Asher. Who is Asher? Son of who? His father was kind of important.
One of the tribes.
His dad was Jacob.
Yes.
So Asherah, where does that come from, right? And then Exodus talked about the midwife Shiphrah, right? That is, well, we just read she's a midwife from Exodus. And then there was a name that is Akobah, which could be a feminine form of Jacob. There was another name, Sekera, which they say that this could be a similar name to Issachar, or might actually be the female version of Issachar. And there was actually, on the Papyrus Brooklyn, the word actually Hebrew. Like that was a name, right? So again, where's the evidence that there was any Israelites in Egypt? Someone says, there's no proof of that. I think the Papyrus Brooklyn says otherwise, right? These were all slaves, if you will. This might have been before they were slaves. They were like servants, if you will. Okay? So that is good evidence that they were in fact there. Okay, now all these next ones will come from the book of Exodus. So the first one is chapter 7, verse 14. Who's got that?
Can you spell that word? Papyrus.
P-A-P Yrus. And then Brooklyn, Brookklyn. Kind of like Brooklyn, like we know the word. Okay, so Exodus 7:14, who's got that? And then Exodus chapter 8. So there's 3 different verses from chapter 8. Like, start raising your hand so I can see who's going to read what.
7:14.
Okay, she's got 7:14. Okay, I need Exodus chapter 8, verses 15, 19, and 32. Who's got 15? I know, he's the only one making noise. Kevin, right, Kevin's got Exodus 8:15. Who's got Exodus 8:19?
I do.
Okay, and then Exodus 8:32. Okay, she's got Exodus. So go ahead and just read those right now, and then there's 3 more. So go ahead and start with 7:14.
Exodus 7:14. So the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to let the people go.
Okay, and then 8:15.
But when Pharaoh saw there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them as the Lord had said.
Okay, 8:19.
Then the magician said unto Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said.
8:32.
And Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go.
Okay, and then chapter 9, verse 7, and then chapter 9, verse 35. Those are the last 2. 7 and then 35.
I'll read 7.
Okay.
Then Pharaoh sent, and indeed not even one of the livestock of the Israelites was dead. But the heart of Pharaoh became hard, and he did not let the people go.
Okay, last one, 9:35.
Got it. So the heart of Pharaoh was hard, neither would he let the children of Israel go, as the Lord had spoken by Moses.
Okay, I mean, probably don't have to ask, but I will. What's the common theme?
Pharaoh's heart.
Right? So when you read that, because I'm pretty sure you've all covered that before, right? This is talking about the plagues, right? And when you read that, well, like, what comes to mind? Harden his heart. Like immediately, what's happening to Pharaoh?
What's happening?
Yeah.
He's just so stubborn and lost.
Yeah, basically, right? He's just stubborn. He won't listen to Moses or Aaron, and he's just he's set in his ways, right? He won't let the people go. Yeah, that's it. I'm not trying to trick you. That's exactly what's happening. Okay? And again, I think it's fascinating. It's almost like you got to dig a little bit deeper and you find something else there that on the surface you might not know. Okay, this is, again, this kind of goes sticking with the theme of criticisms about no evidence for Hebrews in Egypt. So this is called the archaeological number 4 that we're looking at. It's called the negative confession. Okay, about 1300 BC, found in Memphis. So again, major significance behind the words that would normally seem insignificant. So what is the negative confession? The weighing of the heart ceremony in ancient Egypt was a procedure that Egyptians believed occurred after death in the underworld. So this is after Egyptians died, right? So they're dead at this point, and they think something happens. So they believed it occurred after death in the underworld, and it would judge if an individual was allowed to pass on to paradise or the fields of Aru, based upon their deeds in life. Depicted on papyri and the walls of tombs, the weighing of the heart typically showed the deceased in front of scales, with their heart weighed against the feather of truth in the presence of the god Anubis, the demon Ammit, and the god Osiris. So this is actually like pictures you see on the walls, right? Somebody died and they're in front of these scales, right? Their heart's on one side and there's what they call the feather of truth is on the other, right? Egyptians believed that the heart, now catch this, was made heavy with sin. The heart was left in mummified bodies while all the other organs were removed. That's just an interesting fact. The Egyptian theological concept of the heart being made heavy by evil deeds or sin is alluded to in the Exodus story when Moses wrote that the Pharaoh hardened his heart. So in Hebrew, we keep reading he hardened his heart, right? He hardened his heart. But in Hebrew, it's actually he made his heart heavy. So what do Egyptians believe? If your heart is heavy and the scale tips, you do not go to paradise, right? So what's the significance behind this find?
Just the fact that it's mentioned in history.
Well, I think again, it lends credibility that
In Egypt.
there's somebody in Egypt, right?
Yes.
Because think about it. The Egyptians would have known when whether it was Moses or Aaron saying, you are making your heart heavy. They know the negative confession. The heavier my heart gets with sin or bad deeds, I don't go to paradise. So again, this shows that the author, whoever wrote Exodus or Moses, this person knows something about Egyptian culture, right? See what I'm saying? He gets it, and he's also able to articulate it back to them because they know what their negative confession is, and that's why you see it show up in the Bible. And again, I think it gives credence to this idea that this isn't just some random, well, yeah, like I said, you read it, he hardened his heart. Okay, he's getting stubborn, we get it, right? But again, if you dig a little deeper, it shows us credibility. It shows the author is aware of Egyptian thought, if you will, of the afterlife, their vernacular. So that is the negative confession. It's interesting, isn't it? Am I the only one who finds it interesting?
I've never heard that.
And this, again, let me say this. This is why I love this study, because this is not opinion-based, is it? No, it's not. This is archaeology, right? And there's some stuff that has no religious connection to it at all, right? It just is what it is. There's no denying. I mean, you'd be pretty insane to go, there's no such thing as the pyramids, right? I mean, there are these massive structures in the middle of the desert. I mean, I've never been to them, but I'm pretty confident they're there. I mean, if I was there and I actually got to touch it or see it with my own eyes, well, my confidence would be rock solid, right? So again, I like this because we can find things external to the Bible, because sometimes you need to look outside the Bible. People don't want to hear you throw scriptures at them. They don't believe in it. There's no credibility in the Bible. So you're wasting your time if you just start throwing John 3:16 at them. They don't care, right? Give them some reasons outside where they can go, that's not necessarily a biased religious claim, but it's true. I can believe that. Remember, anything you can do to help them just bring one step closer to Christ, I think it's worth it. I think you'd be surprised how much this stuff is actually helpful. Okay, moving on.
So what you were basically saying was that the writer of those passages in regards to Pharaoh, that he was putting it in terms that Egyptians would have understood?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's a good way to put it, right? Because the Egyptians are familiar with the negative confession. When they die, supposedly they stand before these scales with the heart one side, the feather of truth. So Pharaoh knows, I know what he's talking about. He's saying, I'm continuously making my heart heavier with sin. It's not going to work out for me. Okay, next one is just one scripture, Numbers 32:13. Numbers 32:13.
Or in Exodus.
No, Numbers.
Oh, Numbers.
Kevin, I got you. 32:13.
Just want us to read it, or?
32:13. And the Lord's anger was he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generations that had done evil in the sight of the Lord was consumed.
Okay, so we're all familiar with that, right? Because they're basically in trouble. What's the punishment?
You don't get to enter your notice.
Well, yeah, but before that,
You die.
it's a little dark. You die. No, like what else? Like what was one of the words he read? We know that they're in trouble. What?
They were wandering.
Ah, they're wandering, right? For how many years?
40.
It's a long time, isn't it? Again, major critique. There is no evidence that they were wandering. There should be. There should be proof that they were out and about for 40 years, but there is none. Okay? So one thing to note though is that they were nomads, right? You guys know what nomads are?
Yeah.
Right? So there wouldn't be a lot of evidence, I think not, right? So how many of you guys know where Kurdistan is? Angie, the look on your face, she just put something in her mouth and she was like, caught you.
It's by like Pakistan and Uzbekistan and all the stands.
For anyone who didn't hear her, she says, is that by Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and all the other stands?
Sounds like it.
That was awesome. I've never heard that. If you're ever confused, just go one of the stands. One of those countries, right? So Kurdistan is in like 4 different countries. Part of it is in Turkey, another part is in Iraq, another part is in Iran, and another part is in Syria. Now, here's the thing. Kurdistan isn't actually a country, but they talk about it like it is. So all the Kurdish people, they all live in this area. There's so many of them that it's almost viewed as if it's its own country. They have like their own rules and everything, like a normal country would have. But that's the thing, it's not actually a country. But all of them, the Kurdish people, from what I understand, for the most part, they're in this area. So that makes sense though, right? They settle down, even though they're not a people of their own country or their own nation per se, but they're all isolated in one area. You can't miss it, right? Well, some of you might have because you didn't know. And if you look on a map, depending on the map, it might not show up there. But so what's the difference between Kurdistan and Israelites being nomads? Right, nomads, they're just kind of moving around, right? Pick up their stuff, they leave, right? These other people, technically they don't have their own state like Israelite. They were still wandering, they weren't in Canaan yet. But there's so many of them and they stayed in one area and they begin to, you see their laws and maybe their artwork, just things in their culture start to pop up. So you would say, yeah, I know where Kurdistan's at. There's evidence that they're there. But again, Israelites, they were just moving around from here and there, right, wandering. And again, we don't know if there were millions upon millions of them. Maybe it was thousands, maybe a million, but still. So this critique that, well, there should be some stuff showing us. No, I don't think that holds weight. So again, what do we have that says, no, they were wandering, okay? Archaeological dig number 5 is called the Nomads of Yahweh. 1400 BC, found in Sudan, right? Anyone? Where's Sudan? What'd you say?
That sounds familiar.
Not the car. Kevin, did I see you go like this? That way.
It's over there.
That's what he did. He cheated. He was on his phone. I know he was. You know how I know this? Because I don't know why most people are not good with geography. I just learned that. You know what I mean?
Americans.
Yeah. I'm not bragging, but I'm pretty good. I've always liked it. That's, all right. So, there was a temple built on the left bank of the Nile dedicated to Amenhotep III. On one of the pillars and one of the walls, there were hieroglyphic inscriptions. You guys know what hieroglyphs are?
Like symbols?
Yeah, they're like symbols, but they have meanings to them. Like some of them stand for words, right? They're very common in Egyptian culture. So there were hieroglyphic inscriptions mentioning the land of the nomads of Yahweh. The inscriptions mentioned people living in the wilderness east of Egypt and in Canaan. the only ancient people group to have worshipped Yahweh were the Israelites, right? And that's not even a disputed fact, right? A lot of the ancient cultures, they had their gods, right? Like we read about Anubis and Osiris and Baal, right? You're familiar with some of them, right? But there's no one who disputes, no, there were other ancient people groups who had for themselves a god named Yahweh. Never happens, right? Only the Israelites, the only ancient people group to have worshiped Yahweh. It logically follows that these nomads were the Israelites before they settled in Canaan. This inscription is the earliest yet discovered reference to Yahweh, the personal name of God in the Hebrew Bible. This demonstrates that Egyptians of the 18th dynasty and the Pharaoh himself were familiar with the Israelites and the God they worshipped, suggesting contact and dialogue around the time of Moses, the Exodus, and the wandering of the 15th century. Because remember, this wasn't something that the Israelites carved and left. Because I think this lends credibility because this was in a temple dedicated to who?
Pharaoh.
A pharaoh, Amenhotep, right? The Egyptians were writing this stuff, and they were mentioning this land east of where they were, and they called it the land of the nomads of Yahweh, right? Well, we know, the Bible places them during this time as wandering, so that's the nomad part, and then they have Yahweh written on it. The only God for the ancient people groups was that of the Hebrews. So they find, oh, you know what? There's a place over there where they would have been wandering with stone detailing these nomads who worship Yahweh. Right? Again, there's no other ancient people group who are worshiping Yahweh. I don't know how you get around that one, right? It's right there in your face, right? This has to be the nation of Israel as they're wandering. So that is nomads of Yahweh.
That's in the 18th dynasty of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
What you said.
Any other questions so far? Okay. Now this next one is a lengthy passage. It's in the book of Judges, chapter 1, and it's going to be 1 through 29. So maybe someone can take like 4 verses and then pass it on to someone else and they can do 4 verses. And I want to warn you, there's names in there, so do your best.
What is it again?
Judges, chapter 1, verses 1 through 29. So if everyone can turn there, because like I said, we'll pass it off. Maybe read.
I'll start Judges 1 to 29.
Yeah, how many verses do you guys want to do? Like 3? Is that good enough? And then pass it on.
Okay. Judges 1 verse 1. Now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall be first to go up for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up, indeed I have delivered the land into his hand. So Judah said to Simeon his brother, come up with me to my allotted territory, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I will likewise go with you to your allotted territory. And Simeon went with him.
Okay, does anyone else want to pick up?
Sure. Judah went up, and the Lord handed over to them the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and they defeated 10,000 men at Bezek. They found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek and fought against him, and they defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adoni-Bezek fled, and they pursued them and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes.
Kevin?
One, Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick up scraps under my table. God has repaid me for what I have done. They brought him to Jerusalem and he died there. The men of Judah fought against Jerusalem and captured it. They put the city into the sword and set it on fire. Afterward, the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites who were living in the hill country, the Negev and the Judean foothills.
Okay, anyone else, or you wanna go back to?
I'll go. And Judah went against the Canaanites and dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron was, or before it was Kirjath Arba, and they slew Shanae and Ahiman and Talmai. And from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir became, or before it was Kirjath Sepher. And Caleb said, he that smiteth Kirjath Sepher and taketh it to him, will I give Achsah my daughter to wife.
Anyone else?
I'll go. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it. So he gave him his daughter, Cash, his wife. Now it happened when she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, "What do you wish?" So she said to him, "Give me a blessing since you have given me land in the south, give me also springs of water." And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs.
Is anyone else? Is that it, or is there still more?
There's 3 more. And the children of Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of